Growing up, I was a massive fan of wrestling. And I'm talking WWF before the WWE. I'm talking rock and roll wrestling. I'm talking Saturday afternoon on Widewater Sports, if you were lucky. Fingers crossed. I'm talking Hulk Hogan. And I remember one particular match. It was WrestleMania 3. It was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. And this is a classic team up. But if we can go to the video, we'll watch a clip of the match and then I'll come back. Thanks, Elijah.
Just withering away here. Referee checking the arm. Oh, look at that. One more time and it's over. One more time if that arm drops, it's over. Dropped again. It's got to be 3 times, I believe, Jess. Oh, look at that. It's up there. Listen to these pads. He's still got to break the hold though. He's still in trouble. Hulk fighting with every ounce of courage in him. Right on the side of the ear on the right. And another one. Still hasn't broken the hold. The third one did. And another one.
We'll stop it there. You get the gist of what's about to happen. All right? Our hero Hulk Hogan breaks the embrace of Andre the Giant. He turns it around and wins the match. Yay, Hulk. And I don't know, what is happening there is the air is literally being squeezed out of Hulk Hogan, right? He's exhausted. If we can go back to the PowerPoint, he's exhausted, he's beaten, nothing is left in him. The big arms of Andre the Giant is literally squeezing the life out of our hero. Hulk looks unconscious. The referee lifts his arm one time, it falls lifelessly to the ground. He lifts it up a second time and it falls down. The commentator got it wrong, big mistake, but it falls down a second time, lifeless to the ground. The referee lifts it up for a third time and it starts to fall. The referee goes to stop the match, but the arm doesn't go down the whole way. It goes about halfway and then it starts shaking. The crowd is going ballistic at this stage. People are just cheering and yelling for Hulk Hogan to continue to fight, to continue to go against the big arms of Andre the Giant, to think about how awesome it will be when he can win the title belt. The glory that can be his through victory. Keep your eyes on the prize, Hulk Hogan, the crowd may have been saying. Keep going even though it's hard. Hulk Hogan hears that, and as a result, he's able to get the strength and the courage to beat Andre the Giant, win the title belt, and get the victory and the claim that was his. I love that match. But why am I talking about it? Apart because I get the opportunity to show WWE at church. The reason is, this is kind of what Paul was doing. And in this passage, the Corinthian church are struggling. The Corinthian church are lifeless. They're starting to listen to the false teachers. They're wanting to give it all up. They don't want to do God anymore. They don't want to do church anymore. And to a struggling church, Paul is saying, think about how awesome it will be at the end. Think of the victory that is yours, that is certainly yours, assured to be yours. Think of that prize. Specifically, think about how amazing the resurrected body will be that will be yours. Keep your eyes on that, and as a result, go hard now. Therefore, because of that awesomeness which is yours as a believer of Christ, therefore, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Paul is the audience, encouraging a beaten church that was Hulk Hogan. Paul is encouraging them to keep going in the midst of a difficult time. So in this, Paul first gives general points about the resurrected body. He makes 4 little comparisons between the earthly body and the heavenly body that will be ours. And finally, why he's talking about this as a whole. So the way that Paul examines this resurrected body is by looking and comparing it to the earthly body. We see this in verse 37 to 38. When you sow, you do not plant the body, but that will be, but just a seed, and perhaps of wheat or something else. But God gives it a body as he has determined, and to each kind of seed, he gives its own body. The plain notion of a resurrection requires that the self-same body that dies is resurrected. It's not a completely new body. It's not a swap, or it is a revitalization. It is a resurrection. And Paul uses nature for this. For if you plant a seed, what comes after the seed looks nothing like the seed. You plant an acorn, and after years, it turns into this gigantic oak tree. But there's still a link between the seed and the result. Our earthly bodies are that seed. But when they are transformed at the second coming of Christ, we will have new resurrected bodies that have a link to the old bodies, but will be completely different. See, if you have a seed and you plant a barley seed, then you'll get barley. If you plant wheat seed, you will get wheat. If you get a lemon seed, you'll get a lemon tree. Well, there is a different seeds, different bodies, but there is still a link. It's not a trade, but rather it is a transformation. Now, one of the problems with this idea is, well, what happens to Auntie Margaret, who got cremated and her ashes were scattered over the ocean? How is she going to get resurrected then? And I think that's a good question. But if God can make the first man out of dirt, the first woman out of a rib, if he can make plants, animals, and fish, if he can make the sun, the stars, the moon, and the earth out of nothing, then he can transform the ashes of Auntie Margaret regardless of where they may be in the ocean. He doesn't give us all the details. He just asks us to trust him. Well, there are different bodies. The next thing is there are different bodies with different functions. We see this in verse 39. All flesh is not the same. Men have one kind of flesh, animals another, birds another, fish another. Pigs don't fly, fish don't walk, birds don't swim. Well, most of them. Okay, there's the penguins, but you get the idea. The Creator is used to creating certain bodies for certain environments that are suited to those environments. A fish will not survive in space. A star won't work in water, nor will a whale cope in the sky. Each is perfectly suited to its own location. Our earthly bodies are perfectly suited to earth, but then our heavenly bodies will be perfectly suited to the new heavens and the new earth, that which will come when Christ returns and gathers up all those who are his, and thus brings the differences between the two, for there are different climates, different functions, and one of them is affected by original sin. The future one will not be. How good will that body one day be? A body not affected by original sin, a body crafted for a world that will be far superior to the one we're currently living in. The next aspect, though, is that different bodies have different splendors. Sometimes in movies, the sequel surpasses the original. Terminator 2 is better than Terminator 1. Logan is much better than Operation Wolverine, though that was a very low bar. Paddington 2, better than Paddington 1. Dark Knight, better than Batman Begins. And I could go on. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Empire Strikes Back, Godfather Part 2, Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, the list continues. In these examples, the sequel far surpasses the original. Well, another way this can be seen is in technology. Windows 3.1 was great for its time, but if you load it on your PC today, it will be eternally disappointing. Technology dates, and that is extremely the case for software. And so the operating systems arguably have gotten better with each Windows edition. 2000, XP, 7, 8. Of course, we don't count Vista. Nobody counts Vista. Another example is we can see this in our phones. The modern iPhone 13 is far superior than Nokia 500, though I do miss playing Snake. It's not the same on an Apple. It just doesn't work the same. Well, that's kind of what Paul is saying here. We see in verse 40. There are also heavenly bodies and there are earthly bodies. But the splendor of the heavenly bodies is one kind, and the splendor of earthly bodies is another. The sun has one kind of splendor, the moon another, and the stars another, and star differs from star in splendor. Here Paul is contrasting the terrestrial with the celestial. And in doing so, he is saying, how much better will that body one day be? It will be far superior, far more splendor in the future one than the one that we currently have. God will make these bodies much more excellent than what we can see or even imagine. How good will those bodies one day be? Paul then continues this comparison with the earthly body, decaying flesh that we wear being nothing but a temporary suit that has a shelf life, but it will be upgraded. Paul then goes on to contrast the two with 4 small comparisons found in verse 42 and 44. So will it be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that's sown is perishable, it is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. Well, let's unpack those 4 comparisons just briefly. The first one is that it is sown perishable, raised imperishable. Our current bodies are like milk. Our future bodies are like Vegemite. I really like coffee milk, but I refuse to pay $3.50 for 500 mils or even less, 300 mils these days. So what I do is I look for the little reduced sticker. I go to the section, look for the little red tag and make my purchase accordingly. But the reason there is that little red tag is because the milk is going off. It is about to expire. It will shortly no longer be safe or healthy to drink. In my 20s, I learnt this the hard way. Every once in a while, shops would continue to have the little red tag on it after the expiry date, and I didn't realise this until after the purchase and after a few drinks / empty bottle. And my intestines would make it clear that what I drank was not good a couple of hours later. See, milk is perishable in that it perishes. It has an expiry date, and if you push milk past that expiry date, it gets lumps in it, the bottle expands, and the liquid separates. I told you I was a pro at this. Same thing with our bodies. This body grows old, becomes less and less effective, more and more useless. Things break down. Hips need replacing. Eyesight needs controlling. Hairline is receding. This body goes saggy and wrinkly and clunky. It goes off. Unfortunately, it is just a fact of life. Thank you, original sin. But that body will not. That body will be like Vegemite. See, Vegemite is imperishable due to the extremely high salt content. And it doesn't go off. It doesn't go bad. It doesn't expire. And sure, it has a best before date, but that is merely a suggestion. Our new bodies will be like that. They will never go off. They will never decay, never go bad, never decompose. They will last for a literal eternity. For unless Christ comes before it, there will come a day where you will die. You will be buried and put in the dirt. But then when Christ comes back, you will be raised like him, like on the 3rd day after his death. You will get out of your graves. And though our body now expires, that future resurrected body will not and cannot. How good will that body one day be? The next comparison is that it is sown in dishonor and raised in glory. I said we think our body is okay, but when we think about it, it's really pretty disgusting. Weeping wounds, rashes, sores, hives, acne, flab, smells and sounds that are anything but polite in good company. This body can be embarrassing, and there's actually a television show based around that fact. And then there's the maintenance that this body requires just to be presentable. The cutting of hair on the head, face, nose, ears. The clipping of toenails, the showering, the need for soap, the need for perfume or aftershave to off-put the body odour, which is natural but not pleasant. Our present bodies are dishonourable. They are a little bit disgusting, a little bit embarrassing. But our future bodies will be raised in glory. Something to look at and embrace, radiating, shining, and beautiful. It's reassuring to know that there's no ugly in heaven. The honour that this body has at its best, like, for example, on your wedding day when I actually had hair, is no honour at all compared to the gloriousness of the new body that will be ours when Christ returns. How good will that body one day be? So we got sown perishable, raised imperishable, sown in dishonour, raised in glory. The third one is sown in weakness, raised in power. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I used to play OzTag in a competition. And I was much more fit back then than I am today. But even then, after a 40-minute game, my knees would ache. I had to wear a knee brace. My muscles would be in spasm. And I learnt the hard way that you really need to stretch before physical exercise. I always thought that was a myth. OzTag proved me wrong. Every week whenever I played, it would take my heartbeat like a couple of hours to get back to its normal beat. And I would hobble to work. I actually, through sport and the like, I dislocated both shoulders. I've dislocated them a total of 8 times. I forget the specifics, but I think it's like basketball, OzTag, skiing, youth group camp, something like the like. See, these bodies are weak. These bodies are slow and heavy in all its motions, listless and soon tires with action. But our heavenly bodies will be like fire, active and as nimble as our thoughts are. We will be raised in power, in strength, and in endurance. We will be able to do amazing physical feats that we had not thought possible. We will be literally able to run and not grow weary, to walk and not be faint. We will be a living embodiment of the mythologized perpetual motion machine. We will be the literal Energizer Bunny. Our bodies are not just free from disease and aging, but they're also given a fullness of strength and power. How good will that body one day be? So sown perishable, raised imperishable, sown in dishonor, raised in honor, sown in weakness, raised in power. And the last one is sown a natural body, raised a spiritual body. A natural body has one with the natural limitations fitted for this lower world, but the resurrected body will be a spiritual one. Now, when I say that, I'm not meaning that we'll be like Casper the Ghost, that will be ethereal, that we won't have a physical body. For when we look at Jesus' resurrected body, it was physical. He was able to be recognized and he was able to touch and to eat. It's exciting about the possibility that eating might still be in heaven. But as Paul goes on to say, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom. You need immortality, and that's what God is giving you. A different body for a different place, a body that will be in the spiritual body, more able to be controlled by the Spirit, more able to live in the spiritual realm. How good will that body one day be? Now, there's more in this passage. There's a whole thing on Adam that I won't touch, not because it's controversial, just because it takes us a little bit off of our main point here. But then he kind of wraps this up in verse 54. When the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, the power of sin is the law, but thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. I love how he puts that. Oh, death, where's your victory? Where's your victory, eh? Hey, death? Oh, sorry, that's right. My bad, I forgot. Oh, yeah, you lost it. Boom, mic drop. That's the idea of what Paul's doing here. Death no longer has a victory. Death no longer has power. Death no longer has a sting. One day, for those of us who have accepted Christ, who believe in him, then we will be raised with all of those who have passed before us. All our Christian parents and grandparents, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, work colleagues, sports members, all who believed in Christ will rise. Death will be defeated. There is real power and hope in the resurrection. Death has lost its power. Death will lose its control. Death won't be able to touch you. How good will that be? Where we will be free from decay, free from sickness, free from these bodies. The resurrected bodies will be different. But the idea here is not just that we shall die no more, but that we shall be perfectly free from all the bodily evils which sin brought into the world. That our bodies will not be subject to sickness or pain or any other inconveniences that we are daily exposed to. There'll be no disfigurement, no third-degree burns, no cripples, no paralysis, no disability of any kind. People with cancer will no longer have cancer. People who are deaf will be able to hear. People who are blind will be able to see. People who have lost limbs will gain limbs. There'll be no high blood pressure, no low blood pressure, no heart attack, no diabetes, no infection of the ear, skin, nose, blood, or otherwise, no back pain, no neck pain, no knee pain, no head pain, no pains, no strains, no sprains. There'll be no dandruff, no baldness, no acne, no goiters, no unwanted weight gain, no shaving, no waxing, no dyeing of hair, no clipping of nails, no scouring of skin, no chronic pain, no chronic illness, no chronic depression, no chronic fatigue, nothing chronic of any description, no flu, no asthma, no hay fever, no shortness of breath, no emphysema, no aneurysm, no arthritis, no autism, no gastroenteritis, no bloody nose, no indigestion, no belly aches, no headache tension, no carpal tunnel, no RSI, no concussion, no red eye, no allergies, no lactose intolerance, no celiacs, no physical ambivalence, no post-traumatic stress, no schizophrenia, no anxiety, no anorexia, no slings, no wheelchairs, no crutches, no casts, no bulimia, no Asperger's, no disorders that last, no hospitals, no doctors, no dentists, no physios, no occupational therapists, no psychologists, no chiros, no EKGs, no MRIs, no CAT scans, no pacemakers, no voice boxes, no sweating, no fans, no mental illness of any kind, the worst disease, syndrome and disorder you will not find. All long-running war and sports-related injuries will be gone. Our knees will not ache. Our bones will not break. Our shoulders will not dislocate. How good will that body one day be, free from the predicaments that are currently me? I had a friend called Michael. He has Down syndrome. And his parents are Christian. He goes to church. And I don't know, but I hope that I get to see him in heaven. Because I want to be there on that day where he grows a foot. I want to be there on that day where he looks in the mirror and can't recognize the person in front of him. I want to be there on that day where his thoughts become sharp and his speech becomes clear. I want to be there on that day. For how awesome will that be? This passage gives us a glimpse into the future. That is ours if we are saved, if we have a real relationship with Christ. A glimpse to where we are no longer mortal but immortal. Our bodies no longer perishable, but imperishable. Bodies no longer vile and limited, but raised in glory and power. Why does Paul spend time on this? Like this whole topic of the resurrected body. Is it for a theological treatise? Is he attempting to get intricacies of doctrine correct? No. Paul raises this so that the Corinthian church will keep their eyes on the prize. Keep their eyes on what is theirs. The kicker is verse 58. Therefore, my dear brothers, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know your labour in the Lord is not in vain. Therefore, because the victory is assured, because the victory is certain, because we have victory in Jesus Christ, because death is defeated, lost its mystery, lost its sting, because the present reality is not all there is, because there is one day we will have these amazing supernatural spiritual bodies that are imperishable bodies of power and glory. Because of this, stand firm now. Go hard for God now. Give yourself fully to the work of the Lord now. Because you know your hope is not in vain. Because your labour is not wasted. You know this. Because of the resurrected body that is certainly ours, we go hard in the here and in the now. When you're driving, especially this happens on highways, on long road trips, you always often have this car in front of you that you just know that they're like changing the CD, like trying to find the right Taylor Swift song, or they're looking at their phone as they're driving because their car starts to go swerving, right? The car starts to go, on the gravel and hits the gravel and go, oh, and then he straightens up for a little while and then he starts to veer off again, and you just hope that there's that little barrier so he doesn't go into oncoming traffic. And you just know for sure that he's taken his eyes off the road. Because when you have your eyes on the road, when you have your eyes on what is coming up, then your car goes straight. You take your eyes off what is coming up and your car goes skewy. And it's the same thing with us. If we take our eyes off the prize, if we take our eyes off what Christ has earned through his resurrection, if we take our eyes off the eternity that is ours as believers, our car gets skewy. We start to believe the lie that this is all there is. And we start to live for the now rather than for the then. Paul is saying all this to enable us to keep our eyes on what is going to be ours. How good will that day one day be? Therefore, go hard now. Therefore, stand firm now. There may be some of you in that category right now where Christianity might be really hard for you. You're having to give up stuff. You're having to sacrifice things that you don't want to. And there's a temptation there to go stuff it. I'm out. And Paul is talking to you. Therefore, stand firm. Because of the hope, because of the promise, because of the reality of what will one day be yours, stand firm. Do not lose hope. Let nothing move you. Give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know your labour in the Lord is not in vain. Please will you pray with me? Lord, Lord, I pray specifically for those who are listening to this and are struggling, those who are listening to this and are tempted to give it away, those who are tempting to give up and walk away from a real relationship with you. I pray, Lord, that you would just put on their soul, put on their mind, enable them to see clearly what you have earned for them, what you died for them, what you will be giving them. Enable us all, Lord, to go hard for you. Give us opportunities, give us ways, put in our mind different ways of serving you, whether it's officially or unofficially. Help conversations, Lord, come out of this sermon as a result. Help us give ourselves fully to the work of the Lord and show us how to do that, we ask. We praise you. We praise you for the resurrection. We praise you for everything that it means, everything that it gives us. Help us, Lord, to live in light of that. Help us, Lord, to live straight lives, keeping our eyes on what you have given us, what you have delivered us from, what you will deliver us into. In your name, amen.